Once again, hello everyone. Welcome to chapter 3 of C++ programming. Today I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the expression and interactivity inside C++ and practice together how to create programs in Visual Studio with more detail, maybe a little bit advanced program. I just talked about Cin. Last week I introduced it, and I'm going to also right now have more practice for you guys on how to use the command cin. I just said it, I'm going to repeat. In here stands for input. There are two methods in order to get the console on C++ programming to display the requirement, or let's say the output of the program that we are trying to create, or the object that we are going to create. One method is hard copying or hard coding. Let me show you using this example. One method is hard coding everything inside the code. Simply means just use the cout. Let's say we don't have the cins in here. Use the cout, get like the console to display, for example, this message. And of course, right after that, remember during the other chapters I practiced with you, you can add more detail, use the variables. For example, if you have length can be defined right in here to be 2, width can be like 3, area can be 4, or whatever numbers, right? So one method is just given enough detail inside the code. We call it hard coding, means you have some constant numbers or values being assigned to either of the variable inside the code. And then, for example, in here, calling what is the length of the rectangle and say, go read it from length. And then automatically after you hit the compiler on you're asking the computer to process the request, you have no more interaction, or you have no more user interaction with the computer, and it will print out the required information for you. In that case, after the compilation process, you cannot change any of this number or customize it unless you stop compilation process, go back to the detail of the code or the body. Remember I said we call this body, or the body of the code, and right in there change these numbers, for example, to 5, or maybe to any other numbers. That's the only way that you can do it if you do hard coding. Another method which we are going to practice it together today is using the cin command. Means you are not going to assign any certain numbers, like for example 2 or 7, 3 or 6, for no certain number inside the code. Instead, you are going to leave it open for the user to use the same code, use the same program for different object with different. In this example, we are trying to create maybe a rectangle. So for example, you are giving the user the opportunity to use different dimension for the rectangle length, width, and area after the compilation process. So this one is giving maybe a wider opportunity, and people can use the same code over and over for different sizes if they would like to. No, the quiz, I will remind you about the quiz whenever is the time. I'll remind you. Okay, it's not available now. I'll activate it and I'll remind you. Just for now, focus. I'll update you accordingly. So right now, let's go ahead and practice some of these codes together and see how we can use cin command in order to have some interaction with the code after the compilation process. So let me open the Visual Studio. You may want to also open your Visual Studio and keep practicing with me. Otherwise, you might be a bit experiencing difficulty learning the programming process. And that's not my purpose. Okay, bring up your Visual Studio. I'm hoping everybody by now is familiar how to create a program. So I'm gonna push this to the side. You may want to split your screen, or you may want to just have your Visual Studio and follow me. It's totally up to you. So I'm going to use Cin. Remember I said I already have one in here. Look at here. I'm gonna just clean up everything and start from scratch. I'm going to create a rectangle. In order to create rectangle, we are going to start with hash include and first try to create your template. Remember I said for writing down any code, start with creating your template. So hash include and then open your bracket, and we are going to use iOS stream in here. Okay, this is my first line. I recommend you use using namespace directory to avoid repeating the std colon colon at the beginning of each line. So I'm gonna add using namespace std and semicolon. One more time, remember we are closing most of the lines here in C++ with semicolon. There are some certain lines we don't need, but most of the time we need the semicolon as a mandatory syntax to close the lines and avoid error. Then I'm gonna start creating my main function. So I would say int main is mandatory to include parentheses, just blank, leave it as blank, and then use the brace or curly bracket. What you see right now, and most of the time also we need return 0, so you can even include the return 0 at the beginning as a part of your template. So up to this point, I'm having a clear template in order to create a rectangle. First thing for creating any object is defining my variables. Once again, defining variable is something that is like your own choice to choose any name for those variables. But of course, you have to make sure that you are considering right data type to address that variable. What's data type? Again, I'm repeating, data type is a keyword inside programming, C programming, which is showing the type of information that you are going to use for that certain variable. If you are going to use only numbers, you may just simply use integer, which in this case, I'm going to use just integer for length, for width, and one more time, you can define them separately in different line, or since all of them are going to be integer, you can just write down all of them in the same line as well. So width and area, these are the three variables I'm going to define today and consider for my creation of a rectangle. So next, now I'm okay, and I'm not gonna define any number or variable, or in this case integer, for any of these variables. Why? Because I'm gonna teach you how to use cin command. So now simply I'm gonna say cout a message for me, cout, and I'm gonna leave myself some comments in here, or let's say the text. I'm gonna say this program calculate the area of a like rectangle, or maybe triangle, whatever you want. In this case, rectangle. I'm going to say this program is to create a rectangle, right? So now I'm going to, at this point, just either use and L, or I can use \n to make sure this line is going to be a single line and nothing more is going to be printed right after this. So next, I'm gonna see out what is the length, what is the width, and definitely calculate the area. So how do I do it? I repeat the same process, cout, and I would say another message in here. I'm gonna say what is the length, again dot. You can for example say backslash n, which I'm gonna just use backslash n, or again you can use andl. So now I'm gonna say cin. One thing that I want you to be careful. When we use cout, my shift is toward my right. Look at here, cout, shift is toward right. When I use cin, this is super important. If you do it otherwise, it's gonna give you error. When I use cin, shift should be toward left. Okay, so I'm gonna say cin length. Cin length means I want the user after the compilation process to use the keyboard and assign a number to length, right? Now I'm going to ask for another message. So I'm going to say cout, leave myself another question. What is the width, right? Then I would say, what is the width? Okay. So I'm going to just leave this maybe a question mark. And in here, a question mark and backslash n. And you must close it with semicolon. Now I'm going to give the user the opportunity to see in. Once again, shift should be toward your left and enter the widths, right? And semicolon. So far, I've got a couple of cout and I've got 2 cin. Now is the time to calculate the area first. Since I'm having length, I'm having width. In here, I'm going to get the length. In here, I'm going to get the width. And right after that, I'm going to write down an equation to calculate area. We know in rectangle, area will be calculated as a product of width and length, right? So now I have length. I'm going to use length times width, right? And this is how I'm going to calculate. And of course, I must close it with semicolon. Now I have the area. Therefore, I want console to even see out the area for me. So I would repeat the same step, see out, and then shift is toward, again, since it is see out, is toward right. And now I'm going to ask the area is, and I'm going to leave myself some comments in here. Later, after the area is, then backslash n in order to just push it down and make sure. This is one method, or another method is the area is, remember I said then you can get the information from area, then say area since it is already defined, and then use and L. Or use again backslash n. Either will work correctly. And I already added return 0. Now, at this point, I'm ready to debug, but before I do the debugging process, I'm gonna remind you, you must look at underneath the windows, you must see that there is no issue found, you got the green check mark, and then you are ready to push the debugger. And wait for the debugger to give you the result. Okay, it's here. It's a bit slow, but it's coming. Look at here. I'm gonna just make it a bit larger to ensure you guys are seeing it properly. Then I'm gonna bring this up. So you can see first thing is popping up is this program is to create a rectangle. Now it's asking me first, the first question, what's the length? And it's waiting for me to command it. So I'm gonna give it a number, whatever. I'm gonna say 5. Then it will stop writing there until I hit enter. As soon as I hit enter, it's going to ask me another question. What's the width? I'm going to give it another number. That's just an example. I say 4. And again, it's waiting for me to enter. And as soon as I hit enter, it will consider 5 and 4. And of course, it's putting them on the area equation, line 13 in my code. And it will calculate the product. And then it's giving me the area is 20. This is the way that we are properly using in order to have user interaction in C++ programming. So at this point, I'm going to wait for you before I start anything new to just ask any of your question. Somebody is asking, how do we add unit? Unit, you cannot do it inside as an, let's say, you cannot do it as a cin. If you are looking for unit, you simply come back to your cout. For example, you wanted to say centimeter. So then you have to say the area in, right in here, in centimeter is, then the number will show up. So now I'm going to just stop this one. Again, press the debug. So you cannot enter this unit after debugging process. You have to include it inside the code. You have to hard code the unit. So now as soon as it is debugged, then it will give me the area in centimeter is, for example, 20 or whatever numbers I consider for length and width. So now I have to go through the same process. It's asking me the length. I'm going to say 5, 4, and then now it says the area in centimeter is 20, and so on. Any other question? Okay, so I'm going to go back to the lecture slide. At this point, since I already just displayed everything for you as an example on the console, we are done with this part. You know how to calculate the like the area of a rectangle using C++ programming. If you use the cin command, it will give you the opportunity to customize the same code for different application. Let's focus on some mathematical expression. Also, even calculation of area right in here in line 13, it could be considered as some practical method or practical example. But one more time. Here you can see I've got another example about calculation of area. I'm going to have some complex expression and I'm going to use mathematical operator. Remember, any symbol like asterisk, like addition, like subtraction, like division, they are called, this is what I have discussed in chapter 1 and 2, but still I'm gonna remind you, these are what we call them mathematical operator, right? So now, these mathematical operators that you can see right in here, some of them, we are going to use them exactly the way that we do during regular mathematical, like for example, writing on the paper or on the Word document or whatever. But some of them, they must appear in a different format. For example, if I say area assigned to 2 times pi times radius, for example, in here, radius is a variable, and this variable, I'm gonna move this to this part. My pen doesn't write in that side. So this radius must be defined as a variable in advance, then included in here. Otherwise, instead of putting radius, I must use a certain number either with decimal or without decimal point. Pi is something known for programmer, or let's say for the compiler. So definitely I have to define it as a constant at the beginning of the code. So these are things that we are going to practice them together. Let's, for example, look at here. I'm going to have 2 plus 2 times 2. First thing that you need to consider, mathematical expression in programming, they do have some priority one will be considered before or after the other one. Very similar to regular mathematical operation. Like for example, if I go from left to right, in here, asterisk has like priority. If I'm having a slash standing for division or percentage, they do have priority over subtraction and addition. Therefore, first thing that's happening is this one. Compiler will first consider multiplication, then it will consider addition, then it will consider subtraction. So they do have priority over each other. This is first, this is second, and this is third. Knowing that, let's look at a little bit more expressions in here. For example, if we do have this line, 5 plus 2 times 4, compiler first will consider 2 times 4 means 8, and then it will add 5 to the 8, and the result is going to be 13. If I'm having this expression, compiler will first do this part, then it will subtract my like 3. So 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. 5 minus 3 is going to give you 2, as you can see in here, and so on. So always asterisk standing for multiplication, division, and percentage. They do have priority over addition and subtraction, regardless of having parentheses or not having parentheses. Still, compiler will consider those as priority. These are the same. Look at here. Now I'm going to look at here. If I do have no parentheses, what will happen is here, I'm going to have, like, for example, 2 plus 2, if I do it from here, 2 plus 2 is going to be 4. And then 2 minus 2 is going to be 0. Then it should be 4 times 0 should be 0, right? But compiler will consider it like this. Compiler will consider 2 times 2 is going to be 4, right? And then in here, it's going to consider the rest. That's how compiler will consider it. Now, here, this is going to be the right way. So it's going to say 2 plus 2 times 2 minus 2. What is the priority in here? Somebody say it to me. In here, product is 4, right? What's next? Next is, since there is parentheses, now parentheses is priority. So then first it's going to be here. 2 plus 2 is 4. Next, remember, asterisk has priority over subtraction. Then it's going to be 4 times 2, which is the product is going to be 8. Then it will last consider subtraction. Minus 2, then it will be 6. Make sense? Here, since there is no parentheses in here, what will happen? Definitely here is 0, okay? Then we have, since this is 0, parentheses is priority, then we are going to have 2 times 0 is 0. This whole thing is going to be 0. Then we have 2 plus 0. 2 plus 0 is 2. And here, this is 0, this is 4. 4 by 0 is 0. Make sense? Make sense? Same in here. Perfect. Now let's just make it a little bit, maybe, how is 4 and 6? What do you mean? How is it 4 and 6? What do you mean 4 and 6? Which line? Here you mean? First line? Okay. So here, what's going to be the first? It's gonna be here, 2 times 2, right? So this is going to be 4 times 2 is gonna be 8, right? Priority is in here, 4 plus 2, 6, minus 2, 4. Make sense? Look at here. 2 by 2 is gonna be 4. First is this part. Then there is plus 2. 4 plus 2 is gonna be 6. Then there is minus 2. 6 minus 2 is gonna be 4. Make sense? So this is first. This is first. Then this is second. And then this is third. First it does. I said first it's going through product, right? Multiplication. Then subtraction, then addition, then subtraction. Next in here, I'm gonna have a little bit more detail. I already explained this one, but here. I already calculated area for you using just having integers. Now there are situations that I'm gonna use variables. If I'm gonna use variables, I have to use asterisks, okay? If I use LW, it's wrong. Compiler will consider this whole thing as a variable, right? So you have to use asterisks. If you are going to use for example, exponential, to just have it to the power of something, or exponentiation operator, in order to have it in regular situation, we say s to the power of 2, right? But in programming, we must use, remember I said s to the power of 2. Now we have to use the term power. But in C++ program, we don't write the whole keyword power. We just use POW. This is a keyword which is known for the compiler. So we simply write down, let me just put it in here. Like for example, if you want the area to be like that, we have to say area equals to POW, and then any variable we have. For example, in here we have, like, for example, length, to get error. This is wrong, but it's just an example. In terms of mathematical, length cannot be like that, but we have to say length and 2 means to the power of 2, right? That's how we use to the power of any number. In this example, to the power of 2. So we use the keyword power, we use any variable, right? And then if we are doing to the power of 2, then we say 2. If we are doing to the power of 3, 4, or anything, we have that chance to address any other numbers. Now, most of the time, if we are going to get the compiler to consider the order of number, we must use parentheses. Otherwise, remember, I just in this slide I show you, if I don't use parentheses, calculation for the same numbers is gonna be different results. I just showed them in here. Look at here, all of them are 2 plus 2 times 2 minus 2. But just having parentheses or not having is giving me 4 different numbers in this example. Therefore, having parentheses is going to help you to command your machine to do the right action for you. I recommend you, please, if you are playing with multiple mathematical operator and numbers, definitely consider having parentheses to make sure you are going to get the right result from console. For example, if I'm going to have one variable like m, considering y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, if I do not consider parentheses in here, the result of my calculation is going to be different than the time that I do consider parentheses. If I don't consider parentheses, remember, parentheses is always priority. Regardless of how many other operators I do have, parentheses is the priority. So if I do parentheses, even if I have multiple parentheses, it's gonna be treated from the first one, okay? Regardless of what is inside the parenthesis. So inside the parenthesis is not defining the priority. The actual parenthesis right in here, for example, I do have this one to be the first one, regardless of inside is addition, subtraction, division, or multiplication. Still, this one is gonna be the first one. Since it is reading, compiler is reading from left to right. First one, first parenthesis is going to be first consideration, then division, then the next parenthesis, then division. That's the way compiler is going to treat. For example, 6 times b in algebraic expression, like what you do on the paper, you may not use x as times or even asterisk to do the multiplication. You may just write down 6b. But in order to have the right result inside the operator, right in here, inside the Visual Studio, you have to use asterisks. Here, you may want to use 3 times 12. 3 times 12, you must write it down 3 asterisk 12. If you've got 2 different variables, then for each of this variable, you must still include 1 different asterisk. This is the way that we are expressing anything mathematical correctly. Let's add a little bit more detail. Like, for example, remember last time during the chapter 1 and 2, I talked about data type. Data type is the keyword in C++ programming, which is defining the type of variable that we are going to use. Type means, is it a letter? Is it a sentences? Is it a digit? Is it a digit with decimal point? Right? And so on. We don't have any other types. It's either of this. But we do have many different data types to address this few formats of the result, not only one. And what's the difference? Remember, the difference is, for example, between integer and double. I said integer is for the time that I'm having only one number, maybe 4, 3, or something like that. But if I want the numbers to include decimal point, here instead of integer, I have to say double. Then I can include decimal point. Otherwise, if it is only integer, I cannot. And so on. Now, suppose I'm having double and long double. Therefore, long double and double, both of them are dealing with numbers with decimal point, but this long or signed and unsigned for integer or double or any other thing is just defining the size of that data inside the compiler or inside the computer. But still the type is, for example, in here, a digit with decimal point. Here could be a digit also with decimal point, but here it's just a digit, a number, or an integer. So long, unsigned, or signed, they are only impacting the size of the data being stored in the computer. So now, for example, long or short, these are just helping to have less data inside the computer or more data inside the computer. Let's look at overflow and underflow. There are situations why we need in general, why we need to just have different data types while we are dealing with the same type of data. For example, just integer. Definitely, we may just experience having less RAM or less room for storing data inside the computer. In that case, if we have some idea how much data we are going to have or what's the size of the data that we are going to have after the compilation process, and definitely if we are aware and we know what we are creating, it's much easier for us to save the speed of the computer, or let's say the storage of the computer, size of the storage of the computer by using the type of data or data type which is occupying less amount of RAM inside the computer, right? Otherwise, we may overflow. And here I mentioned it. If we are assigning some data, which is a huge data to the program, it's going to overflow. Or if we are assigning a data type, while we do not need such a large data type in order to complete creation of that object, we are underflow, means we are borrowing a lot of RAM from the computer, but still we don't need it. We just borrowed it as occupied, but we don't need it. Therefore, we are bringing the speed of the computer down. And we cannot use that amount of RAM for any other aspect or any other process on the same computer. So it's good after you become expert to make sure that you are using the right data type in order to define your variables. Another information in here is about typecasting. Typecasting means I go ahead, I define, for example, double length, right? Width and area. Next, I'm going to say, what is this length with, let me just remove, like, let me just say, and one only, double M. M is going to be one variable. I don't assign anything to it. Next, I'm going to say, what is this M? So I would say M is just a variable. Now I'm going to assign it to a static cat. A static cast is a keyword. I cannot a static and then I have to say underscore cast, right? Then I'm going to say this static cast is going to act on the same double data type like this. Double. I'm going to correct. I do have a typo. This is O, double. So a static underscore, I'm going to remove this, static underscore cast, double, then I have to close the bracket. And then now I can define the same. Remember in here, I had some example for you. I'm going to use the same example for M, how to calculate this one. So I use a static cast in order to calculate it. So I simply write down the same thing. I would say right after this, I'm going to calculate inside the parentheses, can calculate y2. This could be minus y1 and then divided by, again, parentheses. And of course, I have to define y and x as variable in advance. Otherwise, I'm going to get error. y2, x2 minus x1. And then I can close it off with semicolon. So this is what we call it a static cast. You can use a space or not use a space in terms of calculation is correct. Or I can use a static cast for any other variables or data types as well. So let's look at one code using a static cast. I already want to just, I'm going to clean up this part. I leave again my template and I'm going to practice another one with you. I'm going to define a book. I'm going to say, I'm going to use a typecast to avoid integer division. I don't want to do the integer division. So I use the same template. I define my books. Then I define my month. These are my variables. Then I'm going to say, what is the average number of books per month? So I would say double because average number might include decimal. Since it might include decimal, I'm going to use double. Double per month. This is going to be the average. I'm going to calculate the average number per month. Next, I'm going to have some, for example, see out. How many books? Let's say how many books. And I'm going to just use maybe maybe Andel in this example to practice Andel with you. Next, I'm going to say see out the number of. Remember, I keep practicing see out, see in to make sure you guys know how to use them. See in, shift R toward left, see out, shift R toward right. And then I'm going to ask for see in books. So I'm going to simplify the question. How many books? And of course, for the month, I'm going to say how many months books and another repeat. I'm going to copy this, paste it in here to simplify. In here, I'm going to say how many months. And now I'm going to see in months. And then I'm going to do the calculation. For calculation, I already used per month. So I'm going to use the same per month to do the calculation. Then I'm going to use the static. A static underscore cast. When I cast the double, this will help me to avoid integer division. So then I would say, what do I want to cast? I'm going to cast my double, which is the per month. So I would say double, right? And then right after that, I'm looking at the books, right? So I have to close my double and then say parentheses, books divided by parentheses, and side should be months. And I have to close it with semicolon. This is how I avoid integer division using typecast. We call it typecast, right? I'm done and I only want to just see out the result. See out, then I'm gonna say, let's say per month. See out, this is, and then I'm gonna see out per month, and I can simply use endl to finish it off. Let's debug. Definitely check your green check mark. Make sure everything looks perfect, correct, no error. Then hit the debugger. It should ask me two questions, give me two options to just enter two numbers, then use them in order to calculate my per month. So it's asking first one, it's asking how many books? I'm gonna say maybe 4 books. Then it should say how many months? I'm gonna say 3 months. Then it should just calculate it as this is 1.3, let's say, right? So it's going to calculate, take 4 divided by 3 to give me the average book per month. Any questions so far? Any question? We use a static cast in order to avoid integer division and still receive the decimal point. That's why we use a static cast. Somebody's asking why we use it. So at this point, I'm going to give you a few minutes of break, and then I'll be back with the rest of the session. Once again, I'm going to go back to the typecasting. I just practiced one example with you about how to avoid integer division, and I used typecast. One more time, a static cast or typecast generally is going to give us in C++ programming the opportunity to convert one data type to another data type. In this example, for the books and months, I'm using integer. And now I'm going to use this to integer in order to calculate just the average per month, which might include some decimal point. Therefore, I'm using double for the per month, right? But in order to display the decimal point and being able to convert integer to another type of data, which is double, I have to use static cast. Remember, for this certain example is to avoid integer division. In general, typecast is helping us to convert one data type to another data type. So, reminding that, now let's continue. See style and pre-standard type cast expression. I already practiced like the cast, static cast with you. Now let's just practice, like for example, in the situation that we use CS style cast. CS style cast means I'm gonna still use the cout. I'm gonna use any data type. This is, for example, in here, a data type which is supposed to be defined before inside my program, like for example book in here, but anytime I do have some quotation around a statement, that could be just a cout statement, so you don't need to define what is. And then this is what I call it CS style cast, which simply means data type name, which is the integer in this example. I'm gonna turn it to pink for you, and then the name of that variable. So I'm gonna call it CStyle cast. So I use the data type, in this example integer, and then right after I'm gonna continue with the ch, which is like for example my variable. Same in here, this is going to be pre-standard. So pre-standard means if I already have ch as a pre-standard inside the code, then I don't need to put parentheses around the integer. I can put it around the ch, since ch is already included inside the compiler, or let's say inside the directory. Now, if I'm going to use both of them together, I simply use a static cast like the way I did in here. I use the double, then I use the variable. That's what we call it, a static cast, which means I'm going to convert one data type to another data type. That's why I use a static cast. Let's look at some more details about combining some assignments. It's very similar to what we discussed earlier, but a bit more practice, a bit more detail. So pay attention. Suppose that, remember I said in C++ programming, when we are using the equal sign, it's not gonna be considered as the same way that we use equal in mathematical operation. This is going to be considered as assigned, not equal. This is not equal. This is just simply assigned. This is not regular. I'm going to write equal. It's assigned. So when I say x assigned to y assigned to z, and z assigned to 5, means put number 5 in all of these variables. Regardless how many variables, set all of them to be 5. Now, if I consider parentheses, remember always parentheses has priority in programming, right? Therefore, it's gonna start considering parentheses first. I'm gonna clean it up and go through it with you. Like for example, in here, if I'm gonna consider parentheses, right to left means, since this is the parentheses, right to left means it will first consider here, it will put z being assigned to 5, and then since this whole thing already is 5, then it will consider y being assigned to 5 again. This whole thing will become 5, and then it will put 5 being assigned to x. So then definitely it's gonna consider all of them to become 5 again, but in a different order. Output is gonna be the same output, but in a different order. Now let's combine them. I'm going to first, let's say, calculate what is sum, right? So, and then I'm gonna add 1 to it and assign it to sum. So this is going to add 1 to the variable sum. At some point, let's say I'm going to define sum is going to be 2, maybe before. And then now I'm going to say consider 2, add 1 to it. Now switch that initial sum to become 3, for example. That's what we call it combine assignment. Like, for example, in here, suppose that I say integer book is going to be assigned to 2, right? And then I'm going to say books assigned to books plus 1. In that case, it will consider first book is 2. Now it's gonna put 2 plus 1 inside the book. So it will change the initial book to 3. That's what we call it combined assignment. And so on. Let's practice a bit more. Like, for example, here you can see, I'm gonna make it a bit larger for you to see clear. In here you can see, for example, I'm putting 4, I'm adding 4 to the x. So I have to say first, define x at some point before inside the code, then add 4 to it, and now update that initial x to, for example, if it was 3 to become 3 plus 4, 7, and so on, right? It depends what you are putting in x, right? Or another one, like for example, in here, since I said initial, the final x is 10, definitely the scope, so initial should be 6. If initial is 6, take it, add 4 to it, and then plot 10, like the one in here. If you are going to subtract 3, if it was 6, it becomes 6 minus 3, then it will give you 3. And so on. If it is 6, 6 times 10, it becomes 60. 6 divided by 2, then this guy is going to be 3, and so on. 6% of 4 is going to be 2. Make sense? That's what we call it combined assignment. There's another way to address combined assignment. In here, I practice books equal or assign books assigned to books plus 1. This is one method. Another method to address the exact same line is going to be books plus assign 1, and then the result of both of them are going to be exactly the same. Here, for example, I'm going to comment result is 3. Here also result is going to be 3 as well. So both of them are going to give you the exact same result, either writing it as books plus 1 or writing it plus assign 1. Both of them are going to add 1 to the initial value for the book. Make sense? Perfect. So now let's go on. You can also look at this one. It's doing the same thing. Either plus assign or minus assign or subtract assign. Both of them can, for example, in here, you can say minus 1, then it's going to be 2 minus 1 is going to be 2. And then if you are practicing subtraction, this one is subtraction. Here also it's going to be 2. You can do the same for division. If this is division, it's going to be 2 divided by 1. And here it's going to be division assigned. You can practice also percentage assign, and so on. It's the same for any mathematical operator, or you can practice multiplication operator. All of them is going to be the same. You can have either this line or this line. Both of them are going to give you the same method. Now it's time to just look at our console printout. There are situations that we are dealing with lots of data. And those data, after we wanted to compile them, it's going to give us a messy look on the black windows called console output. In order to clean it up, to customize it, and displayed with a better look for the user, we must add another directory called iomanip. How do I do it? Remember, I said any directory must be added to the beginning of the code. So I use hash include, same way to address it, but this time I'm going to use iomanip. What is iomanip? Iomanip by default is another directory or library or header file. Either of these terms could be 100% correct in order to address line 1 and 2. That includes some certain information for programming. If you are going to become, like for example, a pro programmer, then we might become familiar with different data type being added to a certain directories. We have to understand which directory I need to use in order to have some maybe advanced programming. Definitely you can just gradually learn them during the course. So now iomanip is the one that if you add it to your code, is giving you options to just look at the width of, for example, if you are creating a column, you can adjust the width of the column. You can start, for example, from the beginning of the column, I mean the first point or first spot or first bit, or you may want to push it a little bit toward left or right and so on. Now let's practice. Like for example, we do have one keyword in order to adjust if you are going to create a table to display some numbers. These are going to be your column. This is going to be your row. Suppose that you want to define how wide you want each of these cells to be, right? What do I mean when I say how wide? Means how many characters you want to fit in here or here, right? Therefore, you must use set width. So W in here stands for width. Annex definitely is just a variable. It can be any other variable, but set width is a keyword. So let's practice this one. I'm going to clean up here and I'm going to just create a quick short program to just work with iomanip directory together. Please practice with me. Otherwise, you won't learn it by heart. If you don't make your hands busy while you are learning, since programming is not something to watch and learn, you must do it. You must experience some mistake. You must receive error in order to learn. And of course, you must engage me to help you to fix the errors, to debug, to troubleshoot, to gradually remember how to do it correctly. Therefore, practice. So I already added IOStream and IOmanip. Those are there. I already had in my template using namespace. And I have the structure of my main function. I do have space for creating the body of the function. Let's create the body together. I'm going to start with defining some integers to put them down inside each of these cells inside my column. Suppose I'm going to create this column. It's this table. It's a 3 by 3 table. So I'm creating a 3 by 3 table in programming. Let's do it together. It's fun. It's important. And you are going to have questions similar to this later, even inside your lab. So I'm going to say integer number 1. I'm going to assign it to maybe any random number, maybe 2. I'm going to give it some space. Number 2, I'm going to assign it to maybe another number, 1 space. And then I'm going to give more space in here to make it a messy look, right? Then I'm going to say number 3. This is by intention. I'm going to make it a messy look. And then we will see how it will appear on the console, maybe 21. Then I'm going to add another comma. And then I'm going to add number 4, maybe another random number, then comma, then number 5, another random number, and then maybe number 6, another random number, and number 7, 8, and 9. So I'm going to repeat this right in here. So I'm going to make it 7, 8, 9, and maybe changing these numbers to something else to get some random numbers. So I've got how many cells? I can even put all of them in the same line. It doesn't really matter. But if I put them in the same line, you cannot see all of them unless I make it just a smaller screen. And definitely you have to close it with semicolon. So the reason for me to push in some of them down is just to make sure you can see all of them. Otherwise, this could be all in same single line. Now I'm going to display the first row of number. First row of number is going to be this two. So I'm going to say cout since I want only the first row. And then I'm going to, since I already have IOmanip, if you don't use IOmanip or if you don't add IOmanip, you cannot use set width, right? Then I'm going to set width and then any number you would like to. I'm going to have the width of here. Once again, width of this cell, I'm going to set it to 6 to be able to hold 6 numbers in there, right? And then I'm going to say just include number 1 and then set width 6. Set width again, you have to include it in a parenthesis. And I have to continue until number 3 because I'm planning only to display up to number 3. So again, I would say number 2, and then I would say set width. So I had set width number 1, set width 6, number 2. Then I have to say set width again 6 inside here, and then give it number 3 and close up with semicolon. But before that, since you want them to be clean and nice, definitely either add \n or endl, which I prefer in here to use endl then semicolon. So this will help me to only display the first one. Now, if I want to display the second one, I must do exactly the same for the sake of time. I'm going to copy this. All I have to do, I have to say number 4, number 5, and number 6. This is going to give me the second line, and I can repeat for the third line. So I have to, again, just change this one to number, that's 6. So therefore, this is 7, 8, and 9. Now I'm going to have a table to be printed out in 3 different rows. I can check here. I have no issue. I'm good to debug. It has to give me 3 rows, 3 columns. It takes a bit of time. There we go. Look at here. Exact numbers that I already include in here, 22, 5, 21, 4, 53, 78, and 41, 23, 68, right? Now, I'm using set width 6, means that set width 6, since all of them are 6, I can see exact amount of space in between them. Now, I'm going to change this one to 4, or maybe even something more obvious. I'm going to make it half. Look at here. I have like, I'm going to make this a space to half a space. So I have to change the set width. Then 22 is supposed to shift toward left. Let's debug again and see what will happen. Therefore, set width in here is a command using the IOmanip in order to clean up the screen, right? So now, remember, it was 6. I switched it. I changed it to 3. 22 initially was printed in this spot. I'm going to maximize. It was right in here. Now, since the first one is moved, everything in first line is shifted by 3 spots toward the left. Now I don't have it clean and nice anymore. That's why we use IOmanip in order to clean up the screen, in order to adjust and customize the layout. Make sense? Everybody? Make sense, kids? Perfect. So now I'm gonna just use another keyword for you, which is a stream manipulator. Still, explain what part somebody is asking me to explain again. Ask the question clear. Explain what? Which part is not clear? Definitely I'll go through it again. Okay, I'm not hearing back. Okay, set width. Set width, look at here. Set width is just some keyword in order to control how wide I want each of the cells inside the table to be. In order to use it, it's a keyword. Look at here, set width is a keyword. This one is included in IOManip directory. In order to use the set width, which is just something like a cosmetic option here in programming, I must first address line 2. I have to add IOManip. After I add IOManip, I am able to just adjust the distance, or the, let's say, the width of each cell, or distance between the numbers. I initially use 3, I change it to 6, I use 6, I change it to 3, then everything shifted, and now I do not have a clean screen anymore. But before I had a clean screen when everything was 6. So I use set width to adjust the width of each cell and to address from what point I want the console to start printing the number. When I say 3, it will start from point 3. When I say 6, it will start from point 6, printing the rest of the information. If I say 5, if I say 4, you can use any number. It will start from there, right? That's how we use set width. Let's just look at another extra information. So again, it's going to be something not technical, but mostly in order to clean up the screen. So another one is fixed. There are situations that I'm using decimal. And of course, if you use decimal, means your data type is going to be double in order to use decimal. Therefore, then you can use fixed in order to still say how many decimal after the display you want. For example, do you want, like for example, if you are using maybe 5 divided by 2, do you want only 2.5, which is one decimal? Or if maybe this is another number like 2.1 and it's supposed to give you more decimal, do you want still extra decimals to be added or not? In order to like address that issue or that concern, then you are gonna use fixed. So you use fixed point, floating point, in order to address any number, in this example, x being assigned to x, and how many decimal after, for example, that number you want to display. Another one is show point. If you want the decimal numbers for floating point, float is a data type like integer, like double. If you are using float and then you are going to use, for example, decimal number after the number, you can use show point as well. Let's practice them together. Like for example, in here, you are going to calculate, look at here. So you are going to calculate day 1, 2, 3. Day 1, 2, 3, all of them are showing 2 decimals. So first I use set with 8. This could be 6, this could be 5, this could be 3, it could be just anything. But in this example in here, I'm going to use 8. First I use set with 8, means I want each of this to not to be less than 8. I definitely want them to at least, in this is just one column, for example. In this column, I want the width to be 8. How many number do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's still up to 8 character. It can fit in this column. So I want the set width, for example, in this here, it could be 8. So then I want only 2 decimal, right? So I'm printing out only 2 decimal. But there are situations, since this is, look at here, day 1, day 2, and so on. This is having cin, therefore this is something that the user can just enter after the compilation process. Like for example, day 1, for day 1 just give a number. For example, day 1 they had maybe 58 point something, maybe 0.2 cent. Then it will be plotted in here, another number for day 2, another number for day 3, and the total will be the addition of these numbers will be plotted right in here. So width, set width 8. And set precision 2. Set precision in here, as you can see, I'm going to add, for example, in here, set precision. How do I use it? I have to say C out. I don't have calculation in here, but I'm going to practice it with you. Set precision is a keyword. I have to say set precision, parentheses. If I put 2 in here, means include only 2 decimals, like this example. It's including only 87. If I put 3, means consider up to 3 decimal. If I put 4 or any other number, means consider up to that certain number. Like if I have it 4, means consider for example, if there is more in here, 8713 means consider 4 decimal point, consider 3 decimal point, or anything. And then I have to say fixed, right? This is how I can address how many decimal point I want. Using set width, I say how much I want a space between the numbers. Using set precision, in case I'm having decimal point, I say how many decimal point I have to add, and then I close it with the keyword fix, means fix it for all of them. Include that decimal point for all of the numbers. Okay, I already answered your questions. And of course, you can also look at the recording later too. Now, just let's review. So I'm going to use set with any number based on my preference, based on the project I'm working on, in order to define the space between the number. I use the fix to display the floating point number. In the floating point number means those decimal points. I use show point again to uh, actually convert any zeros to be displayed, right? Even if there is no number or something, it will show me some zero. And I use set precision with any number in order to say how many decimal point I want. So fix to tell or to command I need decimal point, set precision to command how many decimal point, show point to say even if there is no decimal point, still add 0 as a decimal point. Left and right is just considering for to justify the subsequent to be left justified or to left just means right in here means do you want to move toward here is going to be for me it's gonna be my right, or you want to justify toward left. That's what we can use in here, left or right. Next, the in, we already practiced the in. I'm gonna practice something new with you. So suppose in here I have C in. First, I have to define integer. Let's say integer length. This is just an example. And then I'm going to say cin length. Means after the compilation process, give me an option to have a user input. Now, if I go ahead and debug, it should ask after this table that it was already there. It should ask me for cin length. So now I do have a space to use the length. So for example, I'm going to have 5, right? So now there is another method to ask for the cin length. How do I use ask? I should ask get line. Get line and cin, both of them are going to give you the same option to input. Get line. Get line is a keyword. Then I have to say get line cin length. My variable is length, and close it with semicolon, right? Get line, cin length. So these two are going to give you the exact same option. In that case, you don't need this one. Get line, cin length, and so on. Next, it's going to be like working with some characters. So far, I already practiced just double and integer. Now it's time to learn how to use a string. I already discussed a string could be used not only directly here, but also as, for example, you add a directory as hash include a string. But in this case, I'm going to define, let's say, cin instead of adding a number, just add some character. Can I do that? Yes. But that's the situation that instead of integer length, for example, I do have maybe char name or whatever. In this situation, I can use cin and the name. Cin name is going to give me option if I debug to, I'm going to get rid of this part. We don't need it anymore. We are just practicing something different. So then this is going to give me the option in order to just see in some characters. So I'm going to close this one, debug. And then it should ask, it should just blink because I don't have cout. It won't pop up a question. If you have cout, it will pop up a question. If not, it will blink and wait for me to give it a name, for example, Kimia or anything. This is how we see in a character. Next is gonna be, we want to skip over blank. Simply, we can use cin.get. This is also something that is gonna be just helping you like to skip over. In this case, I'm using name, so I would say name. And I have to close it with semicolon. Then if you have some blank, it will skip and it will consider only that certain name or character. Let's put it in one example. I already said, I'm gonna maximize it. I already said I have just name. Then I'm gonna add some cout. Let's say this is practice or this is example. This is an example or whatever. And then I'm gonna say in here, either just endl or just leave it as it is. Then I'm gonna use cin.get my name, and then I'm gonna have another cout. Then I'm gonna say pause, stop here, or maybe pause here. And then I'm gonna have another cin.get. Let's see what will happen. But this time I'm gonna leave it blank. I don't include my variables, and still I'm gonna add semicolon, and then I'm gonna just leave it at this point to simplify the example. So what I'm doing in here, I'm trying to show you 3 ways of how to use cin.get to pause a program. Initially I said go ahead, use cin.get and just cin a character or input a character. Then I said just cin.get and just do nothing, right? Another way should be, I'm gonna say this is a stop here. Maybe I'm gonna add another one right in here. Now I'm gonna say, wait a moment. Therefore, I'm gonna say cout first, a message. Cout, maybe just one message in here. I'm gonna say, wait for me. And then I'm gonna say now, my variable is name, So I'm going to assign the name to cin.get. This will wait for you, but still I must include parentheses and close it with semicolon. So I've got three methods. This is method 1, method 1, 2, and 3. I've got three methods to show you how to use cin.get in order to get the program to pause and look after your command. So I'm going to debug. First, it should pop up with this is an example. As you can see, this is an example. My first scene is just wait for me, right? And then it's gonna stop right in here, right? So I never ask, so it's just skipping over. I never asked to just see in something. I said get name. So it doesn't let me in here. It doesn't let me to do anything. So I can go ahead, debug again. But in the first one, it's asking for name. So in here, I can just, this is an example, then Kimia, then enter. If as soon as I say Kimia, it will just wait for me a stop. It will skip the rest. Wait for me, stop here. It won't give you option to add anything in here, to add anything in here, simply because you don't have any variable. Just for the first one, it's giving you option to add something in there. So it's skipping any blank space if you use cin.get, but still it is printing out any of the messages. You already practice. Now, if you are going, I can add more. If you are going to ignore or let's say skip over, then you have to say cin.ignore. All of these are going to be keyword. You cannot change them. Cin.ignore is helping you to skip next character. Or you can just give it more detail. You can say cin.ignore, give it some information. Like for example, ignore number, let's say 10, move to the next line using \n, move to the next line. Means skip this one, skip 10, and move to the next line. If there is a character 10 or 10 character, skip all 10 characters and move to the next line. This is how you can say ignore. In here I said cin, the name. After you see in the name, print out this one. But since this is empty, skip this line, print out this one. And since this is empty, skip line 16 as well. Hopefully it's clear for everyone. Any questions so far? At this point, I'm going to pause. I'm going to activate your quiz. Cin.ignore is, somebody is asking what is cin.ignore. Cin.ignore is a skipping, like for example, if you are going back to the same example of printing out some numbers like here, or maybe the previous example that it was a table like this one. If I say ignore, then I can say, for example, ignore number 7, or cin.ignore is ignoring maybe number 2, number 6, based on what you want. So if you want to ignore some of the numbers to be included in the process, you can use cin.ignore that certain information, maybe 10 characters or so on. Cin.get means get this line. If there is any information, print it out. Get this line. If there is any information, print it out. If there is no information, skip that line. Move to this line. See it. But if nothing inside the parentheses, skip. That's why we use scene.get. That's the application of scene.get to skip a line, or maybe some portion of a line. Like for example here, ignore is some portion of a line. So let me stop at this point, then we will come back and continue from here. Meanwhile, if you have any question, feel free to ask. Great. Now let's practice a string member function. So far, we practiced even using some characters as cin. Before, we practiced how to cin some numbers. Then we practiced, for example, in here, how to cin a name. I use my own name. Now we are going to look at a string member function and operators. So to find the length of a string, like for example, a string means any statement, anything which is a combination of a couple of characters, several characters or so, then we use a string. So for example, Texas in here is a string. But there are situations I'm having a very long string, means lots of characters are included in that statement, sentence, or a string. And I need to know how many. Therefore, first I have to include that certain string in here, just something simple like Texas. So a string state, my state is variable. Let me clean up here and go through it together. So in this example, instead of integer, double, long, short, or many other data type that we practiced so far, I'm going to use a string as a data type. So I use somebody's hand is up. Any question? Or that's my own hand up? Probably it's mine. So I'm going to use a string as a data type. A state in this example is going to be my variable. And then I'm going to assign it to something like, for example, even Hamilton, which is the city of your university. Or let's say Texas in this example. Right? So then I'm going to close it with semicolon. And of course, next time, suppose that you are looking for how many characters are included in this state name or any other variable name in here. So how do I address it? I have, since number of characters doesn't have decimal, I can simply use integer. Size is going to be another variable, is going to be assigned to, I called it state before, so I must use the exact same variable, dot length. Dot length in here is not variable. It's going to be considered, see, immediately the color is changed to brown. Simply mean this is a keyword. It's not in the previous example of rectangle, I use length as a variable. Here, since I'm using it as dot length, it's not variable. It's a keyword which is going to count how many characters I have or what's the length of this name in here. Right? So this is how I can get compiler to go through it and say, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Length is 5 in here because I have 5 characters inside this name. Now, another thing is we already combined some of the operators like plus an assignment, like subtraction and assignment, division, multiplication and assignment. Same in here. Even if it's not number and if it is a string, still we can do exactly combination of assignment as well. We can initially say put Hamilton, Burlington, any Toronto, any like name in here. Later we can say now put another name in there. Initially was name 1, now put name 2. Using the like combining assignment. So now let's look at some more mathematical function. Definitely every now and then inside lab, inside midterm, inside final exam, you have some mathematical operation that you need to go through it. Also, always I try my best in any assignments, in any lab question or exam question, I'll give you required equation. I don't expect you to practice math inside programming. I give it to you, but I expect you to be able to convert that regular mathematical operation and convert it to a format that can be understandable for the machine or for the program. You will get the equation, but you need to know how to convert it to a way, like, for example, if needed, add parentheses. Remember, I just said even if you wanted to just make something to the power of something else, you must use POW and something like that. So that's your job, but I always give you the equation. And I always definitely also teach you how to convert those equations. Then I will ask you to do. Now, during the mathematical like operation in regular time, for example, if you are working with some sinus waveform definite or sine in like C++ programming, we have to ignore e at the end and we have to just address it with sin. For cosine, just COS. For tangent, just tan. Square roots, so you are going to just make it shorter format. You are not expected to write the whole thing. If you do, it's not understandable by the compiler, because inside here there are some library that we call it CMAS. And anytime that you are going to deal with mathematical operation, first you have to add that library. So you have to say hash include CMAS to be able to use any of these functions that I'm showing right in here. If you don't include CMAS inside your code at the beginning, you won't be able to use sine, cosine, tan, square roots, and log or absolute value. But first address CMAS, then use any of them if needed. That's another thing. Now, CSTD lib is another header file or library, which we have to use it like this. Remember, I said gradually over the time I introduced different libraries. So far today I introduced 3 extra. So another one is CSTD lib. So we have to say CSTD. And usually as soon as I start typing, it should show CSTD lib. Another one, CSTD lib is usually for sometime that you are going to use like random number. If you are going to return a random number, you need to add CSTD library. Therefore, even a random number, these are something that, for example, I get you to look at the minimum and maximum. We are going to practice it together. Look at the minimum and maximum boundary, for example, starting 0, maximum being 9, and pick up a random number from 0 to 9. In order to do that, use CSTD_lib as a library or header file at the beginning of the code. Later come use rand with this format. I'm going to comment it for now to not to get error, or srand. If you are going to return a random, use rand. If you are going to initialize a random number, use srand. Srand, and then that certain variable x, y, z, or whatever. There are situations that you want to just check a step by step, see, for example, what step should be the beginning and then next, what should be the next, and so. That's what we call it hand tracing a program. Definitely means a step-by-step programming. So you have to look at uh, the order that you are putting down your lines, because compiler will start from, for example, in this case, it will start from line 1. First, it will get access to IOStream, then IOmanip, then CMAS, then like CSTD lib, and then definitely namespace, and then it will start from the beginning of main function. Therefore, we need to consider what line should be before the another one, because here they will be considered by compiler one after the other. Therefore, make sure that the steps are correct. Otherwise, you may miss some of the information or logic or mathematical operations. Let's just practice this one. For example, I'm going to maximize. For example, I'm having few numbers, which I'm going to calculate the average. It's like this table. It's a 4 by maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's a 4 by 9 table. First, I'm going to print out the numbers, then calculate the average of each row and just put it down in front of it. So first we have to just define the numbers. This is going to be random. That's why I'm using just random number, just iOS stream. Simple. I'm not using any mathematical operation. I'm not using any random bean pick. I'm just using iOS stream since I only deal with integers. Actually, here is double because I'm going to consider decimal point. So first, seeing the numbers, numbers are not given in there, seeing them and calculate the average. So this is going to ask for 3 numbers, 1 and 2 and 3, and calculate the average and display the average. It's simple. This is a simple practice. We already did it in other cases. And now I'm going to look at this case study with you for the rest of the session, and we will close this chapter with this case study. We are going to create and build some, like let's say, program which is going to calculate the volume, cost, and maybe profit of some building. So in order to do that, this is the way that I say we have to look at this step by step. First, I have to define the variables, right? Because I'm going to first calculate the cost per cubic foot. I have to define variables like length, width, height, volume, cost, charge, and definitely at the end be able to look at the profit. So these are the steps that we need to consider. That's why I say step 1, I'm going to ask the user to enter the diameters or sizes for each of length, width, and height, and then do the calculation. Do the calculation like create the volume, the cost, the customer charge, and the profit. And the very last step is the see out. So is see in here, is the math in here, and is the see out in here. So I'm going to do this in 3 steps. So this is a chart to make it a bit understandable, a bit more understandable for you. Since we are going through 3 steps in order to calculate the volume, cost, price, and profit, I'm going to have it get the see in, go through the calculation, and display. These are the same, but each time add more detail and do the calculation. So let's do it together on the console. What do I need in here? Remember I said I have math, I have calculations. So I'm going to keep my IO manip for cleaning up. But the math is just maybe summation. I'm not going to use sine, cosine, log, or any. Therefore, I don't need CMAS. If I need something like that, sine, cosine, log, then I have to include it. Otherwise, I don't need it. Also, if extra header files are in here, it won't hurt. Technically, it won't do anything bad. If you miss something, yes, you are going to get error if you are having it inside the body. But if you have extra and you don't use it, it won't give you error. This is my template, and I'm going to create some calculation for volume, cost, and so on. Initially, I created using namespace. I don't repeat. Now in here, I'm going to define some constants for my cost and the amount that I'm going to be charged. Those constants either could be out of main or inside the main. I'm going to put them inside. To define any constant number, I have a keyword in C++. We always use const. Double is going to be the data type. So const is a keyword standing for constant since I'm going to give it a fixed number. Double is the data type, which is helping me to have some digit with decimal point. And then I'm going to give it a variable. So cost per cubic foot, the whole thing is going to be my variable, but I'm gonna simplify it. I'm gonna say cost per cubic foot. I'm going to simplify it. And I'm going to assign it to 0.23, maybe dollar or anything. So even cost is too much easier. It's going to be like, no, let's it be like a cost per cubic feet. Next, I'm going to have charge per cubic feet. I'm going to do the same. Const, still double as my data type to be able to have decimal point. And then this time is charge per cubic feet. I'm going to assign it to a fixed number, 0.5. So far, I'm done with my constant numbers. Now it's time to define variables with no number and get them to be seen later. So my variables are going to be width, are going to be height, and I want all of them to be double. So in order to make it easy, I'm going to have them like all in the single line, double. Width, height, maybe even all of them here. Volume. And I want cost. And I want charge. And of course, profit as I was asked inside the, let me just make it larger in here, inside the question. So this is what I want. Hopefully everybody can see. And definitely I must close it with semicolon to avoid error. Now I've done all of those, and I'm going to set my desired output format. Remember, I just taught you how to use set width or set precision. Let's again practice them. So I'm going to say cout. You can first avoid doing this, display the output and see how messy it is, then come back and fix it just for your own practice. Or like me, since I know how it should look like, and I want it to be the way I want, so I do it before even having any trouble with reading. So I'm going to say cout. Set precision is helping me to define number of decimal point. How many number do I want? Only 2 at this point. I wanted to set my number of decimal point to 2. Then I want them to be fixed for every decimal point. I'm going to fix this number too. And I'm going to use show point to just still, in case that I don't have a number, still give me 0 for it. So I use show point for that purpose. Show point for that purpose, and I close it with semicolon. So set precision is giving me the number of decimal point. Fix means for all of the numbers, give me the same number of decimal point, and show point. If I don't have decimal point and it is like, for example, an integer, then I still have it like dot, since it is 2, then dot 0, 0, and so on. Hopefully it's understand. Next, I'm gonna have some prompt for the user. So I simply say cout, maybe just some command, cout, like, for example, enter the dimension, or anything that you would like to. And then right after that, I always try to either use backslash or endl to make sure that I'm gonna have a clean. So if I want backslash, since I already today used view endl, I have to include the backslash inside the quotation. But if I use endl, I have to move out of the quotation, means out of here. But backslash inside, so I use backslash n, and then out of the quotation, I close it with semicolon. I'm going to maximize to make sure everyone can see. And that's the way I use backslash n. Now I'm going to get the user to see in all of the length, width, and all of whatever I want. So I'm going to just simplify it. And for the sake of time, first one I typed, the rest I'm going to just quickly copy and paste. So first one is length. So this is going to be my length. Again, since I want some space to print out the length, I just created right in here. Then next one is CINIT. The same thing is going to be length. It should be exactly the way that I defined it at the beginning. Therefore, I'm gonna use the same style. Length. Do I have length? I haven't asked for length in here. I asked for height. That's why I'm gonna add length as well. So I'm gonna say length. If I don't add it in here, I cannot call it in there. So just add it same way and call it in here now. Call it right in here and semicolon. If it is matched, it should change to blue. If it doesn't match, it will give you some underline red and you must fix it. Now I'm going to do the same thing that I did for land for the rest. So I'm going to copy this, maybe some space, paste. But instead of length, next time I'm going to say ask for width. And since I already have it, it's going to give me the exact same one. Next time, so I see out length, see out and in width, see out and in height. And height in here. Right in here. Okay, perfect. I'm done with that step. It's time to calculate the volume, cost, charge, and profit. I'm going to do only one of them at this point. Volume is assigned to, how do I calculate it? Length times width times height. So I already have length. I'm going to take this. I use asterisk, and then I do have width. I select width. Again, I use asterisk, and then I do have height. I choose height, and I'm done. So I can close it with semicolon. This is calculation of volume. Next, I'm going to calculate cost, which is, I already calculated volume. I have to take it time. Remember, I define is cost, right? Remember, I just said cost per cubic feet. So that's volume times this cost per cubic foot is going to give me cost. So it's going to be, I did volume. I use the volume, asterisk, and cost per cubic feet and semicolon. I do the same for charge. For charge, I have to take cost. I have to take cost, actually volume again, volume times, but charge per cubic feet. I have a typo in here, volume, and then charge PCF per cubic feet. And what else? Last one, profits. Profit is assigned to, now I have charge. I already calculated charge. Then I already calculated cost minus cost and semicolon. The only remaining is going to be, so these are going to be a step 2. I'm going to leave myself a comment. Remember, inside the slide, I said I need 3 steps. This is a step 2, means all of the mathematical and calculation and everything in here. This is a step 1, which means all the definitions, variables, and everything. Step 2 is all the calculation. Last step is going to be all the display or see out. So I'm going to say see out. My message is going to be the volume of, like just the volume. This is my first message. The volume is, maybe I'm going to create some space for the volume to be shown, and semicolon. And then see out. Or I can simply simplify it. The volume is, add volume in here, means go get it from volume. This is just a better type of doing it, or you can do it in 2 lines. In here, I did it in 2 lines, but I prefer to do it in 1 line to simplify. Go get it from volume and go ahead and read the cubic feet. Cubic feet, remember somebody for the other example said, how do I address the unit? you always have to put it down right in here. So I'm going to say cubic feet and then dot \n to ensure I'm going to move to the next line. This is the first one. Second one, I can do the same method. I'm going to say in here, the cost is, again, I'll do all the whole, like the expectation in a single line. Go read it from, this is the cost. So go read it from cost. The cost is, calculate the cost. Look at here, I do the calculation right in here. And just, I want the cost to be in dollar. So I'm going to put down that. Either you can put the dollar sign before, which we usually do before. So I have to put it inside quotation, maybe like this, maybe a dollar sign. And then the cost is going to be printed out right after. And after cost, you can again use either \n or &l. Either of these two methods are correct. I did the cost, so I'm going to do the same for the charge. I'm going to have the message to be the charge is, charges again in dollar. So I'm going to first say either inside here, I can say dollar sign to simplify, and then create some space, get out of here, and then go get the charge from charge, because I already calculated charge, that's a known variable. And then &l, this is one method, or you can do it in two different line. And the very last one to finish up with today is gonna be the message for the profit. So I would say profit is colon dollar sign, and go get it from, I already calculated profit right in here. Go get it from this line, type profit, and that's it, &l. We are good to go. Only remaining a step is check your green mark. If you have no error, you are ready. I'm gonna, before going through the debugging, I'm gonna review it with you. This program is helping us to define some variables and then take those variables, go through some mathematical operation. And I'm using IOmanit. The only reason for IOmanit is to be able to set the number of decimal point based on my plan for this project, fix them for every number that I'm gonna use in this program. And if in any of the program I'm receiving just a simple integer with no decimal point and my decimal point is 0, still I want them to be shown as 0. Backslash is standing for move to the next line. And these are my cout scene. Cout is output. Scene means just use the user interaction command. Step 2 is just all of those calculation. And finally, I'm going to display all of the required information. I'm good to debug. Let's do it together. Coming up, expectation is just some questions such as like some pop-up message, and then give me the option to see in, because I have the see in command. So first is enter the dimension. For length, suppose I'm gonna use 5.3 since it's double. For width, I'm gonna use 4.1. These are just example. Height, I'm gonna give it maybe 7.6. Now it's taking the numbers that I just added and is considering them to calculate the volume, to calculate the cost in dollar, volume in cubic per feet, cost in dollar, charge in dollar, and profit in dollar. At this point, I believe everything is just given to you. Still, you are more than welcome to ask any of the question, and I'll be happy to help you with extra clarification if needed. Anything that you need more question? No? Perfect. So thank you very much for being here. I'm going to stop the recording in here and I'll post it on Avenue for your reference.